Hey guys, Michael here. When I released that list of basically the full mod list that I turned into Steam Workshop Collections a couple days ago, I talked about doing a little bit of testing with a lot of the different legendary lords because they're not balanced, and this is not intended to be a criticism at all. I like the fact that these mods create a little bit more of an imbalance between the different factions, and I think one very interesting side effect that is what I'm going to illustrate here in this video. So I want to do a deeper dive, though, into some of those mods because they really are kind of interesting when you dig into the details of them. And one of them in particular, I think, has really become one of my favorite mods, and it's really a transformational one. I've talked before about how the movement mod is probably the game's most transformational mod, but I'm really starting to appreciate all the subtlety of Serb's slower expansion and settlement supply lines, and in particular the slower start version of it, which is the one that impacts the player in his very first province. And just stick a pin in that. We're going to come back to that in just a second. But now I want to spend a moment to talk about Warriors of Chaos. Now, Warriors of Chaos is a really well done race from CA's perspective, as far as I'm concerned. I think it was one of the better DLCs, or I don't remember if it was a DLC or if I guess they just did the rework at the same time that they did Immortal Empires. But anyway, whatever it is, obviously they reworked the how the Warriors of Chaos work, and I think they did a really fantastic job on it's really interesting mechanics that are a fun faction to play in many ways. But there's one real elephant in the room that stands out with the Warriors of Chaos, which is that for the most part, their campaigns are too easy, right? I mean, they're just too strong. And in particular, the way that the Dark Fortresses work, basically the Dark Fortresses are so strong that you take one, you move on, you pretty much don't even have to defend them because they're strong enough to defend themselves. It really it always felt to me like with most of these guys, you take your first Dark Fortress, you immediately start expanding, and there's just no looking back. That's kind of been my own personal experience with them. Now, that's fun sometimes, but as many of you know, I really like a challenge, and so I don't drift into these guys very often because of that. They just don't feel as challenging as some of the other factions. All right, well, keep that in mind now when we go back and we talk about what I said to stick a pin in, which is Serb's Slower Expansion Settlement Supply Lines mod, which is, if you remember, every time you take a new settlement, you experience a growth reduction, you experience a public order, a pretty massive public order reduction, you experience replenishment reduction. And what I have found out in my testing here recently is that it actually has this really almost like a nerfing effect on Warriors of Chaos. And I actually mean this in a good way, which is I like the dynamic that it now introduces into the Warriors of Chaos. It doesn't make them feel as much like a steamrolling faction. I'm going to show a little bit of an example here of that. Now, obviously, this is not going to appeal to everybody. People who aren't looking for more of a challenge, people who like the current pacing of Warriors of Chaos, this is absolutely not going to appeal to you. But I think for a lot of people who are kind of maybe more like me, who feel like this faction, when you play it, it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to win, maybe this will change your mind a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump into it.
It is time! We march south! Let the quivering fools know we come to tear down their nation, slay their kings, and ravage their mortal remains!
Alright, so here we are in an Archaon campaign, just, the standard Warriors of Chaos campaign right here. And while I'm setting up here to prove my point, I do want to mention I haven't tested out all the different factions yet, but what I'm about to talk about here for Warriors of Chaos is probably going to affect some of the other factions as well. So if you've got thoughts about a similar type of thing about other factions that are going to be impacted in a fashion similar to how Warriors of Chaos are, yeah, please do mention that in the comments. And if there's others that you think like, oh, I'd be very curious to see how exactly this is going to impact such and such a faction or a legendary lord, let me know, and I'll try to prioritize doing some testing of those as well. But anyway, so here's my point. I'm just going to do some auto resolves here to make this go a little bit faster to show the point. Now this is legendary campaign difficulty, very hard battle difficulty. That I just went ahead and turned the AI stats modifiers all the way up to their maximum. So this is as difficult as the game can be. This is also using all of the full suite of mods that I listed in the Uber modded version from a couple of days ago. So Serb's slower expansion and settlement supply lines mod is not the only one that I'm using here, obviously, but it is the one I want to focus on for this. So as you can see, pretty much looking normal right now. We've got our close victory here in a battle over these guys. Exquisite Pain. Let's go ahead and I think I could probably get away with the 30% campaign movement range reduction, but I don't want to risk it because I am using Brogus's dynamic movement range mod. So I'm actually just going to take the experience here, and then we're going to move up and we're going to take our Dark Fortress here. So just because I'm obsessive about getting those event messages looked at. Okay, let's go ahead and take our skill ups. Go ahead and get your Blade Master. Didn't even look to see what your trade is. Your trade is Burning Body. Okay, that's not my favorite, but whatever. All right, so yeah, we can reach the Writhing Fortress here on first turn. And with any luck, I'll be able to auto-resolve this as well. Yeah, okay, I can auto-resolve this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Don't lose any units. I'm not too worried about the casualties because this is just an example. So we're going to auto-resolve this. Obviously took quite a bit of damage. This is due to the mods that we're using that make siege battles tougher. Probably could have fought that manually and done better, but it's fine for now. Okay. Warrior Bane, yeah, it's a good one. We'll take it. Good starting weapon there. And we're going to occupy and vassalize, obviously. Boom. Okay. So far, pretty much normal, just like vanilla, right? Capture settlement. Mission successful. That's good. Got our weapon there. Ruby Rune. Wow, okay. We're actually doing quite well here for from a magic item standpoint. All right. Ignore all that now. Here's what I wanted to focus on. This right here. Exhausted supply lines. So normally the way that the slower expansion and settlement supply lines mod works is that you start out like most normal factions. You start out with a settlement, your first settlement, and then on the first turn you conquer a second settlement. And what happens whenever you take a new settlement with that mod, you'll see a debuff occur on the closest settlement, like your first one, and then also on the one that you just conquered. And it does what I mentioned earlier. It slows down your growth. It reduces your public order, and you get a casualty replenishment debuff. I think there might be one or two other things it does as well. But anyway, that's how it works normally. But with Warriors of Chaos, with all of the legendary lords except for Festus, you don't start with any settlements at all. And the way that this mod triggers is when you take a new settlement, either like a really long distance away from your regular empire, or in this case, when you don't have any empire at all to begin with. It just generates this right here, which is these exhausted supply lines. It's 10 turns worth of debuff. Now, they are diminishing debuffs, but they're extremely significant at first, and then they slowly reduce over time. And you can immediately see the impact. You see this character is minus 19. That's in addition to the conquest of minus 10. So we're looking at, even though we've got 12 units here, providing a plus 12 military presence to this settlement, it's still losing 31 points of public order every turn. And that's going to slowly diminish over time, but you can already see the math. This is going to rebel within a few turns, particularly if we go ahead and pull Archaon Archaon out next turn and start running them down here to continue the offensive. Now, you can still do that. This is still a, the player has been enabled to make decisions like this. It just makes the decision much more complicated. And what I think you're going to often find out happening with these Warriors of Chaos Lords is that you're going to need to linger your starting army in your original province for a much longer period of time and deal with these debuffs. So not only do you have this public order issue that's going to immediately happen, that's going to slow down your rapid expansion, but you also have this, which is you're getting a minus 50 currently debuff to your growth, which means Writhing Fortress here sitting on tier 1. Even should you build this growth building right here, we'll go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and, of course, build the favor building as well. But this Dark Fortress is just not going to grow for a very long time. I've tested this out now on a couple of different campaigns, and it basically is not anywhere near as strong of a secure location for you to just leave behind as you go fighting elsewhere. And this is going to consistently happen with just this little bit of an impact in terms of slowing down your ability to just conquer one new objective and just directly move on to the next one. That's the kind of thing that we wanted to accomplish with our mods, right? Because it slows down that whole steamrolling effect of vanilla, and you can really see a strong example of it right here. I'll show you another example of a Vilitch campaign that I was doing, where I'll jump into closer to the middle of the campaign and just show how much slower it ended up being in terms of your expansion. Now, one other thing I did want to mention is most of the time for me, when I'm playing Warriors of Chaos, I have a tendency to, particularly somebody like an Archaon or a Kolek who get that direct benefit from the more vassals you have, the more of a buff you get. Even though it's not the world's greatest buff, it still thematically makes sense for them to try to just basically play Pokemon with vassals and get as many of them as they can. So normally what I do is I get my vassal, I go down, I conquer a new settlement, and then I give it to my vassal. I usually occupy it for one turn to give myself the extra replenishment of being inside the settlement. And then the next turn I'll move on from it, and I will just go ahead and give it to my vassal. I guess my vassal's over here. So I would come down here, I would take Monolith of Bubonicus, and then I would just give it to Kull. But you can't really do that with this. Well, I mean, you can, but you are punished for doing that with this slower expansion mod, because even if you're not going to keep it, well, as soon as you conquered it, you immediately triggered this effect. Now, we can't see it right here. Normally what happens is you'll see a little 5 appear right here and a little 5 appear right here to show that it's 5 turns worth of a debuff as resources get moved around, population is relocating, supply trains of wagons or whatever are going back and forth, basically giving the new settlement all the resources that it needs. It's disruptive. And so that disruption will still occur even if you're going to turn around in one turn later, hand that settlement over to one of your vassals. So this is the example of Archaon. Like I said, I'm going to show an example here of Vilitch in a minute. And yeah, you can kind of see it's not, I mean, it doesn't like cripple Warriors of Chaos. I would say the faction still feels very powerful, but it does certainly provide an interesting dynamic that you have to deal with that does have a little bit of a cumulative effect then on bringing the Warriors of Chaos back down to earth, let's say, making them more in line with how some of the other factions feel. All right, I think I'm going to leave it there for Archaon and show you Vilitch. All right, so now here we are in the Vilitch campaign, and I should probably be embarrassed by my performance in this one. So here we are sitting on turn 64, and I have a whopping 2 settlements. I have 2 Dark Fortresses, and I'm just absolutely surrounded by enemies. Now, part of this, I didn't engineer it this way, but part of it is I just wanted to see how this campaign would feel if I didn't play like uber aggressively, but I just kind of played organically, the way that the pacing kind of I just let kind of the campaign dictate the pacing to me, I should say. And so what happened was I obviously started out. I took the Red Fortress just like normal. I ended up getting these guys. I'm trying to remember now the name of what this Norscan faction is that you vassalize ordinarily with Vilitch. Anyway, I obviously vassalized them on turn number 1, but then because of that public order issue and the slow growth and the fact that it's multiple turns to get over here before you can do much, I did come over and I ended up taking Dragon's Crossroad and giving it to my Norscan vassals, but by that point I had to race back here and deal with the rebellion that was happening in Red Fortress. And that was enough of an impact that slowed down this campaign to the point where these guys up here, these guys have been absolute jerks throughout this campaign. This is, of course, Zatan the Black, or however you pronounce his name. Anyway, he finished off Aghal, or I think it's Aghal. Not Aghal. There's a minor Cornish faction up here that starts with an A. Anyway, I don't remember. Anyway, he finished them off and immediately declared war on me. And just as a side note, by the way, I'm pretty thoroughly unimpressed with CA's AI changes that they've made recently. It just feels to me, I experienced in this campaign something very similar to what I experienced a few weeks ago in the Torox campaign that I did, which is every AI faction declared war on me and only on me. It just seems like all they've done, I shouldn't say all they've done, they've probably made some improvements to the AI overall in terms of its behavior being smarter, but it sure feels like they just amped up the anti-player bias, which is fine. I understand anti-player bias does need to be in the game for those of us who like a challenge, but anyway, so the Chaos Dwarfs here, they declared war on me right away as soon as they could. That's fine. But in the 50 or so turns since then, they have never gone to war with anybody else. Of course, Cathay's declared war on me. I had in this campaign Grimgor down here, who I wasn't even aware that I had diplomatic relations with, because I've never actually seen him in this campaign. He had relations of -28 with me. Well, he declared war on me. And, even though we didn't share a border and we had absolutely nothing to do with each other, he declared war on me, and he wasn't at war with anybody else either. And it's like he had to have been surrounded by potential enemies, and normally Grimgor goes to war with the Chaos Dwarfs as well. Yeah, well, he skipped the Chaos Dwarfs just to declare war on me. So anyway, it's been kind of hilarious to watch the anti-player bias in this campaign, like it has been in some of the others I've noticed. Anyway, that's all beside the point. My point, going back to this campaign, has been a real challenge, and I have loved it, because the combination of everybody being at war with me and only with me, I think that only at war with me. I have had to basically fight my way from having only this single settlement. Obviously, they came and they wiped out my Norscan ally, because the Norscans are pretty bad in the by default, the minor Norscan faction. So they got wiped out, and he hit me. I think he was upwards of like the second or third strongest faction in the game, and invaded me with like 5 armies, and it just took me a very long time. Obviously, we're sitting on turn 64 here. It took me a very long time to win battle after battle after battle after battle to fight off his invasions, to finally get the upper hand and be able to push up here and take Bloodwind Keep. And then I actually pieced out with him for a few turns, because I had to deal with an invasion from Cathay and from somebody else. It was a Beastman faction, not Torox, but another Beastman faction invaded me, so I had to deal with them. Anyway, like 5 turns later, after I pieced out with these Chaos Dwarfs, they turned around and broke the peace treaty and declared war on me again, and so it's been a continuation of that long war. Anyway, ultimately here, I'm still expecting to win, but I have really enjoyed this campaign. It's probably the most fun I've had with the Vilitch campaign, because it has been just nerfed a little bit. because I've just had the extra things to have to deal with that have slowed me down just enough to turn it into a very competitive campaign. So we're about to, you know, up here you can see we're about to take Iron Storm. I've got Vilitch back here. I won a major battle against Zatan, but he's got another army bearing down on me here. He's pretty strong still at this point, so it's with the reduced replenishment. I'm winning one battle, but taking enough in casualties that I'm having to fall back and replenish a little bit. If anybody knows why Vilitch, by the way, is able to replenish an enemy territory, please let me know, because I have not been able to figure out why I'm getting replenishment, even though I'm in chailing stance in enemy territory, but whatever. So, actually, I guess I'm not in enemy territory right now. I'm currently in Torox's territory, and he's an ally. But this whole campaign, I've been getting replenishment in enemy territory with Vilitch, and I'm not sure why. All right, and he's the only lord that I have who does do that, like up here with Mercy. Oh, no, he's in our own territory. So, but he would not be getting... Here, I'll go ahead and move him to show you. Yeah, see, he's in enemy territory. He's not getting replenishment. So I don't know why Vilitch gets replenishment in enemy territory. But it's been useful. Anyway, so the point is that I still have my work cut out for me just to knock out the guy who has effectively been my first major enemy in this campaign. I will eventually. And anyway, the pacing has been slowed down enough to really make this feel like a fun campaign. That's the point. So just wanted to give a couple of examples. I would recommend for those of you who like Warriors of Chaos, but you feel like they're overpowered the way it is, try out this mod. This is again Serb's slower expansion settlement supply lines mod. It does have an outsized impact, I feel like, on Warriors of Chaos compared to some of the other factions. But like I said at the beginning, if you can think of other factions that might have a weird kind of imbalanced effect of that mod, let me know. I'll be happy to check those out as well. Anyway, I just think this provides maybe the extra challenge that I was looking for Warriors of Chaos, and I wanted to let some of you know about that as well. So I probably going to continue to do a little bit more deep dive into this mod and some of the others, so there will be some more videos kind of similar to this. Hope it has been at least mildly interesting for some of you. Please feel free, as always, to leave any comments, and I will go ahead and say thank you all so much for watching and listening. I will see you all in the next video.